Coke Canada Bottling. This is a large bottling plant near highways 407 and 410, and this is where the company made an announcement this morning of $141 million into the facility.
With world-class companies like Coke Canada Bottling investing $141 million to expand their operations right here, creating 500 new jobs during construction and doubling down on Ontario workers and our world-class supply chain.
Coca-Cola just dropped $141 million into Canada. And this is not about soda. It is about supply chains, jobs, and a massive manufacturing shift happening right now behind the scenes. Because when a company this big scales production locally, it signals something deeper about the economy and why companies are racing to produce closer to home.
This announcement marks the largest single investment that our owners have made in our business to date. This will be our most technologically advanced line in the country. It's going to allow us to produce even more of the products locally, supplying the city of Brampton, supplying all of Ontario, and supplying Eastern Canada for decades to come.
In a major announcement, Coke Canada Bottling confirmed what is now the largest single investment in its history, a massive expansion of its production and distribution complex in Brampton, Ontario. And the scale of this project immediately places it beyond routine corporate spending. This is industrial infrastructure expansion, the kind that reshapes regional supply chains, labor markets, and long-term manufacturing capacity. At the center of the investment is the construction of a state-of-the-art high-speed production line built to dramatically increase beverage output while modernizing packaging, automation, and logistics integration once operational. The upgraded facility will be capable of producing an additional 20 million cases of beverages every year, supplying retailers, restaurants, and distribution networks across Ontario and Eastern Canada. That production surge matters more than it sounds because beverage manufacturing operates on razor-thin logistics. Timing, retail chains, grocery distributors, and food service networks rely on constant replenishment, increasing localized. Output reduces transportation, lag stabilizes inventory flow, and lowers dependency on interprovincial or cross-border shipments. In other words, more production in Brampton means faster shelves, steadier supply, and greater resilience during demand spikes or distribution disruptions. But the investment is not just about machines and throughput. It is also about labor and political signaling. During the construction phase alone, the expansion is expected to generate up to 500 jobs, spanning skilled trades, engineering, mechanical installation, and infrastructure development. Provincial leadership moved quickly to frame the project as a win for domestic employment. Ontario Premier Doug Ford emphasized that the facility would be built by Canadian tradespeople using predominantly domestic materials, reinforcing the narrative of local economic benefit tied to private capital deployment. That framing reflects a broader economic priority inside Ontario, attracting large-scale industrial investment that supports manufacturing employment while reinforcing supply chain independence. And the timing of this announcement carries strategic weight. Major capital injections into consumer goods manufacturing do not happen casually, especially in periods marked by inflation, pressure, trade uncertainty, and shifting consumption patterns. When a bottling operator commits $141 million into a single facility, it signals confidence in long-term regional demand. Beverage consumption remains one of the most stable segments of consumer spending, but scaling production at this magnitude suggests expectations of sustained growth across Eastern Canadian markets. There's also an important structural distinction behind the investment TH3 that often gets overlooked. While consumers associate Coca-Cola production directly with the global parent brand Coke Canada, bottling operates as an independent family-run bottling and distribution company. Meanwhile, the Coca-Cola company retains ownership of brand licensing and concentrate formulas. That means this expansion reflects domestic operator strategy, capital deployed by the Canadian bottling system itself, rather than corporate headquarters in the United States. That independence matters because it shows localized confidence in the Canadian market, not just multinational brand expansion. From a supply chain standpoint, the investment also reduces exposure to cross-border logistics volatility, producing more beverages domestically, lowers transportation costs, shortens delivery timelines, and insulates inventory from disruptions. Tied to trade, friction, fuel pricing, or border congestion, food and beverage distribution proved particularly vulnerable during pandemic-era supply shocks, and companies across the sector have been investing in regional production buffers ever since. Union leaders and workforce representatives echoed the positive outlook, pointing to the expansion as a stabilizing force for industrial employment in Ontario manufacturing, corridor large bottling facilities, anchor secondary ecosystems, packaging, suppliers, maintenance, contractors, trucking networks, meaning the economic ripple effect extends well beyond the plant itself. In that sense, the Brampton expansion is not just a corporate facility upgrade. It is a regional manufacturing reinforcement, one that strengthens domestic production, secures supply reliability, and injects long-term capital into Canada's food and beverage industrial base. And that raises the bigger strategic question behind the announcement. Why is consumer goods manufacturing, even something as familiar as soft drinks, becoming a focal point for supply chain localization and economic resilience planning? That question sits at the heart of why this $141 million investment carries weight far beyond beverages. Because what is happening in Brampton reflects a wider structural shift unfolding across North American manufacturing, one where companies are rethinking how close production should sit to the consumer for decades. Efficiency meant centralizing output in fewer mega facilities and distributing products over long distances. It minimized production costs, but maximized logistics dependency. Recent global disruptions upended that model. Pandemic shutdowns, trucking shortages, container bottlenecks, and fuel volatility all exposed how fragile extended supply chains could become under stress. Even highly predictable consumer sectors, like food and beverage, felt the strained shelves emptied, not because demand disappeared, but because replenishment systems slowed. Investments like this one are designed to prevent that vulnerability from repeating by expanding localized bottling capacity. Coke Canada Bottling is effectively building supply insurance. More regional output means inventory buffers can be maintained closer to major retail markets. Distribution fleets travel shorter routes. Warehousing turnover accelerates and During crises, whether labor disruptions or border slowdowns, domestic production can continue feeding demand without waiting on external supply lines. Automation plays a central role in making that model financially viable. The new high-speed production line being installed in Brampton is not just faster, it is technologically adaptive. Modern bottling systems integrate robotics, digital, quality monitoring, predictive maintenance software, and flexible packaging calibration that allows facilities to switch between product types, packaging formats, and volume scales with minimal downtime. In practical terms, the plant becomes capable of handling not just flagship beverages, but diversified product portfolios from zero sugar variants to specialty packaging runs. That flexibility matters in a consumer environment where demand shifts quickly and product segmentation continues expanding. Automation also intersects with labor economics in a more nuanced way than simple job displacement narratives suggest. While high-tech lines reduce manual repetitive tasks, they increase demand for technical operators, maintenance engineers, logistics coordinators, and systems analysts. The 500 construction jobs tied to the project represent the front-end employment surge, but long-term operational roles will increasingly center on skilled technical oversight rather than manual production. From a regional economic standpoint, that transition reinforces manufacturing modernization inside Ontario. Industrial Belt Brampton geographic positioning amplifies the investment logistical value situated within the G. Greater Toronto Area Distribution Network, the facility sits close to dense consumer markets, highway freight, arteries, and warehousing clusters. That proximity allows beverage shipments to move rapidly into retail circulation without long-haul redistribution, reducing fuel costs, delivery timelines, and transportation emissions simultaneously. There is also a competitive dimension embedded in the expansion. North America beverage market is intensely contested, not just between legacy soda brands, but across bottled water, energy drinks, sports beverages, and ready-to-drink functional products. Scaling domestic production capacity ensures Coke Canada Bottling can respond faster to seasonal demand spikes, promotional surges, and regional consumption trends without relying on imported inventory. In that sense, the Brampton investment strengthens market responsiveness as much as supply, resilience. Government officials and union leaders have framed the announcement as a sign of economic confidence, and that framing holds analytical weight. Large-scale capital investments in consumer manufacturing rarely materialize unless long-term demand projections justify them. Beverage consumption remains deeply embedded in retail and food service ecosystems, but committing 9-figure expansion funding signals belief in sustained volume growth across Eastern Canada. It also reflects confidence in Canada regulatory labor and infrastructure environment as a viable platform for advanced manufacturing deployment, an important signal at a time when global firms are reevaluating where to anchor production. Assets. So what? IL headlines. Frame this as a soft drink expansion. The strategic undertone is much broader. It is about domestic production scaling. It is about supply chain localization. It is about automation-led industrial modernization, and it is about reinforcing economic resilience in sectors that consumers rarely think about but rely on daily. Because when a company invests $141 million into a single regional facility, it is not just betting on beverage demand. It is betting on the stability of the market, the strength of the workforce, and the long-term viability of producing closer to home. And in an era where supply chains double as economic security, infrastructure, even a bottling plant expansion becomes a signal of how industries are preparing for the next disruption before it arrives.